Hello everyone, Happy New Year, and it's been a while, 2 months and a bit to be precise, and according to the universe, due to my absence, everything with Mortal Kombat kinda decided to go to shit, didn't it? So yay, a wonderful Doomer video heading your way. With that said, and jokes aside, we do need to have a serious chat, not just about the state of Mortal Kombat right now, but NetherRealm Studios as a whole, its uncertain future, and what really comes next. Because there's a lot of things going on right now externally that can affect the studio, and maybe even dissolve it. But to kind of make sense of this whole mess, let's recap the events that led into this, touching on the current state of NetherRealm Studios and its most recent game, Mortal Kombat 1. Now, whilst these games are known to sell very well, name recognition alone isn't necessarily reflective of the quality of the product. And I think we've really seen that come into effect since 2019 with Mortal Kombat 11 and most recently Mortal Kombat 1. Because whilst it did release with a functioning story mode, a PvE mode through invasions, and an online mode, the game itself released with an uncharacteristic lack of polish that Mortal Kombats are kind of known for, lacking key iconic modes, important quality of life choices, as well as the charm of like extra modes. Something the series has kind of been built upon for a very long time. Say what you will about NetherRealm games as a fighting game, but in terms of content, that's arguably been where they've always thrived. Fun and strange, wacky interactive mini-games that allowed them to stand out from the rest of the market and kind of pad out their price tag. Which made it all that much more strange considering that Mortal Kombat 1 of all MKs had an extended lifespan and development. So in many ways, there was no excuse for it feeling so lackluster and half-baked at release. And admittedly, over time, whilst things have gotten better, it's simply been not enough to get to that price tag that we all paid for, especially with ever-releasing DLCs and expansions. And again, you wouldn't really think that to have been a problem with the studio releasing 2 Mortal Kombats back to back, as naturally you'd assume that in the sequel, they'd try to fix some of the problems that they couldn't do in the prior title, whether that be due to time constraints or limitations of the technology at the time, as they were still utilising Unreal Engine 3. And I also really don't think it helps that since 2019, there's been an extremely heavy emphasis on the brand outside of the video game medium, whether that be through mobile games or movies or animated movies. There's been an oversaturation of the brand, so naturally there's fatigue. And this wouldn't be a problem in most cases if the product was up to par with its reputation, of which right now it's definitely not. Say what you will about Chaos Reigns, but this was effectively the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think that its illicit failure to meet expectations is sign of that. Thus, it's only natural to assume that moving forward, NetherRealm would revert back to their Mortal Kombat and Injustice cycle. So with that in mind, what do we know of Injustice 3? Well, as of making this video, kinda nothing? Whilst official news has not been publicly disclosed on Warner Bros' part, we do know that once NetherRealm finish one of their games, the second it's done and out the door, they immediately start work on the next big installment. So whatever they're working on right now is currently in development. And we did get it more or less leaked through word of mouth, that another Injustice sequel was on the horizon. So that's it, right? More or less confirmed, nothing else set in stone. Well, no, it couldn't be quite that simple, could it? Because over the course of the last 2 months, Warner Bros. Has actually gone on sale and been bought by Netflix of all companies. We live in a really weird timeline. And whilst this deal itself isn't 100% set in stone, as the deal itself isn't going to conclude until the 3rd quarter of this year, it means that we won't likely see or hear any news about this sequel until such business then concludes, or at the very least has stuff locked in. But even so, like, the process of this still does kind of worry me, because this is the same exact circumstances that the studio was put in during the Discovery and Warner Bros. Merge. Something that I undeniably think was a huge contributing factor to what we ultimately got in Mortal Kombat 1. And it doesn't really end there, things just continue to get worse. Because as this whole deal is going on at the same time, Paramount, yes that Paramount, is attempting to do a hostile takeover of Warner Bros., trying to snatch it from Netflix's grasp and, well, take the brand for themselves. Which again, puts it in yet another situation of where things get kind of delayed and held off as this whole shebang just keeps going on. Paramount has offered Warner Bros. A heap ton of money, and they've declined it 3 times. And until this deal is locked in stone in the 3rd quarter, they can keep just offering this stuff again and again and again. And let's say last second Warner Brothers changes their decisions. This makes everything so much more messier, and why is it so difficult just being a Mortal Kombat fan, man? Why can't I just have my fucking punchy game and then that can be the end of it? Well, why do we have this? But even with that in mind, it gets even worse, because with the purchase, Netflix has even disclosed that it has like no interest in Warner Brothers gaming division, which, might I add, is a fucking crazy thing to say out loud. But when we look at Netflix, it does make sense. They aren't really in the business of the AAA gaming division, and I doubt their QR code scan games do very, very well. But even so, throwing out a statement like that is kind of insane, but also so possible because it's fucking insane. Like, let's not forget, business corpos kind of don't give a shit unless it affects their bottom line. And considering Warner Brothers' reputation in their game division right now, I can see possibly why. Which very well could mean that a number of studios could be dissolved this year. We simply don't know. But in my mind, it would be foolish to undermine what the WB Games division is capable of and has done. Either way though, this kind of throws NetherRealm into a bit of a tailspin, effectively being the child in the middle of a divorce. And I really don't think that it helps with NetherRealm's endless radio silence with its own community. It feels like we're being ghosted, and it doesn't help that community sentiment is like at an all-time low right now. Like, let's be for real for a second. 2025 was arguably the worst year to be a Mortal Kombat fan. Like, that's not even a question. Not even a fucking debate. Because how could we forget Final Kombat, with some of the worst production of any esports league I've ever seen? And keep in mind that this was all aired on a global scale. Great first impressions for international viewers, but hey, at least we got to take a trip down memory lane with that collection. You know, the thing they released that was lacking game modes on release, despite the fact that the game released about 30 years ago. How are these mistakes still being made? Now, mind you, it has gotten better, but this really reinforces the poor business decisions that they've been having with MK of push out game, get money, fix it later, miss valuable modes in modern AAA title, no crossplay. And for the price we are kind of paying for these products, it's not acceptable. And of course, how could I forget the lovely Mortal Kombat AI generated book that it peddled off to content creators like myself, not being transparent at all with its community, and choosing to whittle down not just community sentiment with the brand, but also the people that are left to cover this fucking game series. Thank you. Mwah, really appreciate that. Really appreciate being put to the fucking stake for your fucking greediness. So this now brings us onto 2026, with no sign or communication of the future or what's to come. So with that said, what do I want next? What do I want from the studio moving forward? Well, I got a few hot takes here and some things that desperately need to be said. I think that NetherRealm would greatly benefit from actually being separated from Warner Brothers, whether that be sold off or bought by another studio, if the Netflix liquidation does of course go through. Of course, this is me hoping that if they are sold off, they can still hold on to the Mortal Kombat IP, but I don't particularly see the chances of that happening being very, very high. But like, here's just the thing, right? It's been undeniable that the corporate monetization and greed of Warner Brothers has really crippled the series. Whilst I get upping the price from generation to generation, paying for fatalities and skins that should have been in the game in the first place was an egregious and disgusting overstep. It was really a sign of things to come through Chaos Reigns. Now, hypothetically, if NetherRealm is sold off and does not have access to the MK IP, I do think that they'd probably do just fine. But that's also kind of the problem of it. MK is innately in the DNA of NetherRealm Studios. I mean, for fuck's sake, their mascot is Scorpion. NRS without MK is kind of like Star Wars without Darth Vader. It just doesn't feel right. And let's face it, name recognition alone kind of keeps the studio afloat. Mortal Kombat isn't just a fighting game, it's kind of a part of pop culture. But let's explore the other possibility that NetherRealm does go on and stays with Warner Brothers under Netflix. Do things get better? Honestly, I don't think so. I think things will remain to be the same moving forward despite fan reception. And whilst I hope that's not the case, the games still sell well enough to kind of justify those practices. Yet with that said, the new approach from 11 onwards is simply not clicking, whether that be in the form of Injustice or Mortal Kombat. So honestly, the future for NetherRealm Studios is just kind of up in the air right now. Nothing seems to be set in stone, and I really dislike that we're at a point where it's just continuous radio silence after continuous radio silence. The lack of transparency is a joke. Anyway, with that said and everything covered here, that kind of sums up my thoughts and feelings on NetherRealm Studios moving forward and what exactly is going on with them. After doing this for like 10 years, I will kind of put it like this. Do I know what's coming next? No. Do I really care for what's coming next? Honestly, not really. I feel like at this point, NetherRealm Studios, more so Mortal Kombat, has kind of eroded any good faith that it had with its community. Whether that be on its esports side, nostalgia baiting its older fan base, or sabotaging its content creators with AI bullshit. Just whatever little faith it had with its community, it's gone now. And even speaking for myself, I just don't really care anymore. Right now, both MK and NetherRealm need to earn back my trust, my respect, and my faith. And if they can't, then so be it. It simply is what it is at this point. I apologize for this somewhat bleak end to this video, but really, I think it's pretty good for me to be quite honest and transparent with you guys about how I feel with the whole Mortal Kombat situation, especially with like Injustice and then the Netflix merger and then all of that shit. Because really, it's one of the reasons why I took a long break after Halloween. As continuously there has been like non-stop problems and drama with this series since I kind of disappeared. And I'm not here to cover drama. Like the fact that I actively have to go out of my way from what I normally talk about here to talk about this shows how bad it has gotten. So to say I'm thrilled and excited for the next NRS game would honestly be a bit of a lie, and that's whether or not I decide to stick around to cover it or not. In fact, I'll be touching on that in a few more days. I have an update video that it's been long overdue and I've purposely been postponing it, but I do need to talk about the future of the channel, especially with how things are right now. I apologize for this maybe being a bit more doomery than I had expected it when I kind of wrote out this script, but here's kind of the thing, right? You can like something, but still want it to be better. Be critical of the things you like and call out the bad practices where you do find them. Because if they can't live up to that price tag, let it be known. Anyway, this largely summarizes everything I did want to say here. And thank you for sticking around for this partial coverage, partial rant video. Hopefully things can go back to normal soon, but I don't think they will. Well, until then, everyone, Happy New Year. And as always, take care, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.